the Spot Track Podcast, talking sports contracts, the salary cap, and business of sports.
The Spot Track Podcast today brought to you by Bettor Edge, your home for the Spot Track Bracket Challenge. Mike is in it. I am in it. Bettor Edge offers brackets, contests, competitions all the time, and this is a great time of year to get involved. Bettor Edge doesn't work like your traditional sports book. This is a premier social betting marketplace. You can set your own prices, bet with your friends, and avoid the hold that sports books bake into all of their lines. It's the smart financial thing to do. And if you're thinking finances, you have come to the right place here on the Spot Track Podcast. Sign up for the first time, get $20 on the house. Just use the promo code SPOTTRACK at sign up. That's bettoredge.com or on the mobile app. I'm your host today, Brandon Kravitz, along with the godfather of sports contract analysis. He is Mike Ginnitti. Mike, we are ready to go with our bracket challenge. This is this week's Bettor Edge competition between you and I and all of our listeners and followers as well. Who do you have running to the end as your champion in the NCAA tournament?
You know, I went on your show and I pumped my chest. The absolute X Factor wild card bracket. And then I went and picked Duke because the more I've watched them a bunch. I've watched a bunch of these teams. I know that Alabama can score like crazy and Florida absolutely might have the most balanced team, but Duke has the best two offensive players and the best defense in the country. How am I not picking that? You know what I mean? Like that's like picking against the Eagles right now in the NFL. I'm not doing that. So I went and picked pretty chalky. I took High Point a couple rounds because they can score. You know, they can get hot here for a couple rounds. You know, I didn't fall too much into the traps with some of those 12-5s. It feels like everybody's picking a 12. You know, 3 to 4 12s here. Yeah. But you know, I've got some fun little side roads along the way. I've got Michigan State going with them, by the way. I know that's not a sexy pick. I know this Big Ten stuff is softened a little bit, especially as it's expanded out to the West. But teams like Oregon, they're damn good. And if Michigan State is kind of holding the candle right now in this division that is so big and wide, I'm going to take that team over an SEC team right now. And I know that's probably unpopular with a lot of people in your neck of the woods, but I'm gonna run with Izzo one last time and see where it gets me.
Well, I don't blame you. I have Michigan State going to the Final Four as well, but that is something I'm kind of kicking myself on, and I'm already in set it and forget it mode, so I will not tinker with my bracket any more than I already have. But not choosing more SEC teams to go far in this tournament is probably going to be the thing that comes back to bite all of us. The non-conference record for SEC teams this year was outstanding. I mean, they did not lose very much. I actually pulled the numbers earlier. They were 185-23 straight up against every other conference this year. So this is probably where we're all screwing up.
This isn't a math or number show. We don't need that stuff here. We just quickly pick the names we like and go from there.
Well done. I'm still trying to get my 5-year-old son to fill out a bracket, by the way. So I've seen all of these videos over the years. I'm like, when my kid is old enough to choose between an antelope and a bulldog, I'm going to have him do that. Now we're kind of at that point. A lot cuter online than it is in real life, Mike. Getting a 5-year-old to sit and fill out a 68-team bracket, we had to take a break at the Sweet 16. I lost him. Completely lost him.
I tried to get ChatGPT to do my bracket for me to start, and it did not go well. I'm not going to lie to you. It did not go well. They
didn't do well, or they made it too complicated?
It found some advice for me and gave me a few potential upsets, but it would not essentially fill out the bracket. And I have a feeling the gambling sites are behind this.
Yes, for sure. I have done similar things on ChatGPT, and they're pretty vague with that. So it's a win for humans. Would it be the worst idea? I kind of wish that we had done this a couple of days ago, but I just thought of this today. So we're probably behind the 8 ball, but doing some sort of NIL valuations for teams and top players and filling out a bracket solely based on dollars and saying, if you spend more, we take you further, and doing a spot track bracket that is almost in some ways AI generated would it be the worst idea to just simply go to on3.com, look at the valuations and say, I'll take the teams that spend the most money on their players?
I mean, that is how we got to the football championship, correct? I mean, essentially, Ohio State bought the $20 million championship this year. So all of us picking Duke are essentially saying the same thing, aren't we? I have a feeling at least these two kids, these two scorers are in the top 25 in terms of NIL this year. Certainly Cooper Flagg leading the way with almost $5 million in terms of estimated valuation. So yeah, look, there's a lot of smart people probably going this route. I'm looking quickly that Braden Smith from Purdue is the number 2. I wouldn't recommend picking Purdue to go too far in this tournament just after doing some light research, but it's a pretty interesting concept. And certainly with football, Brandon, until otherwise noted, that is how I'm going to put my money down. I mean, why wouldn't you? Right. I mean, and by the way, this isn't new. Right. I mean, there's a reason we picked Calipari's teams for a lot of years when NIL was not legal. You know, I'm air quoting again here. You were buying teams back in the day. LSU was buying teams for a long time, and we just kind of knew how the cookie crumbled. So yeah, this is probably what we should be doing before the season starts is allocating what kind of resources have gone into the starting 5 or the starting 7 players on these rosters, and understand that, you know, if the money talks, and we'll see what happens over the next couple of weeks here, but it's probably not the worst idea with all of these college sports because it's rogue. You know what I mean? Like, we can do our own research here, and it's going to be as good as any professional research because we're all starting from ground zero here on this thing.
And I think the cool thing that we're seeing with college basketball, and I'm curious to see how this plays out this year in the NCAA tournament, because this stuff, while it is still rogue, it's more trackable now than it has ever been in the past. And we are seeing smaller schools that are competing for stars in a way that I don't think we're seeing as much in college football. And just going down the list on 3 and then reading some other stories about potential underdog upsets, those double-digit seeds, Colorado State is paying up for an NBA guy. Yeah. Creighton, Marquette. VCU, one of the reasons VCU is a popular pick, they have a returning player who Villanova was going to throw the bag at, and he wound up going back to VCU because they matched, and he liked it there. That's VCU. Like, the VCUs of the world are not paying college football players in the same way that I like the fact that we're still seeing these mid-majors out there that are paying up to get stars and keep stars on their roster.
Yeah, what we need to do is, assuming most of these kids aren't one and dones, and there'll be a bunch of them, obviously, but the VCU example might be a good one, right? Like let's see what his landing spot is over the next week or so, but then let's also follow his transfer portal, because that's what's next, right? It's I'm going to max out my freshman year from a financial standpoint, and now he's got a platform to do it, obviously, in the tournament. And now where does he land next? Because that's the team we should be eyeing up, is this high-paid kid who's made his money, kid who got a little bit of a tournament run, but now joins Calipari in Arkansas next year as the number 4 player on that roster, and start to do the math for 2026. That's what I mean by this, is we can track the breadcrumbs starting now for next preseason as well.
Absolutely. I think Danny Wolf, the big man for Michigan, is a good example of that. He was in the tournament last year for Yale. Yale upset Auburn. Now everybody's excited about Yale again. Well, their best player plays for Michigan. And these are the kind of things that you definitely have to track when you're filling out your bracket if you want to have any success. And as I say that, I'm sure by the time you're all listening to this, my bracket will be completely ruined.
By the way, Brandon, transfer portal opens in like an hour or something, right?
How
next
dumb
week.
Is that, by the way?
I hate it. It's the same conversation we had in football. I hate it. We've got Will Wade already agreeing to coach NC State before the tournament even starts. He had to sit down with his McNeese State players yesterday and admit this out loud. Sorry, guys, this is happening. Let's go out there and win games. It's just brutal. This timing is brutal, and I feel terrible for these organizations.
Yeah, and when we saw West Virginia's coach take the job at Indiana, he was apparently holding his kid out. Who's the kids on the team, and he knew he was going to take this job. Hey, let's just sit you on the bench. They end up getting screwed in the whole bracket process, and UNC gets through. It's a mess. There's a lot to figure out. Let's transition to the NFL. Danielle Hunter and the Texans agreed to a 1-year deal, $35.6 million contract extension. The Texans seem to be doubling down on the roster that they built last season. Do you like what Houston's doing right now?
I do. I don't think they did enough last offseason. I thought they were sort of resting on their laurels a little bit. And it seems that they're much more aggressive this time around. Not so much with the older veterans, but more of like impact depth players. So this is a couple of things, this Danielle Hunter situation. It's a little bit of back pay because they certainly underpaid him, can bring him in. And now having seen where even the age 30 edge rusher is getting paid now with Myles Garrett and Max Crosby and eventually here Trey Hendrickson. This is just a bit of a pot sweetener. They're going to move some money around over a 3-year process. It's going to be a really nice uptick. This is like a 15 sack player per year. And with Will Anderson on the other side of that line, it's a really formidable 1-2 punch and a roster that I think is markedly better than it was in 2024. But that's resting on the fact that CJ Stroud can turn back into Superman a little bit here, because it was a bit of a regression year for him for sure.
And we saw one of his top wide receivers from last year taking a meeting with the New England Patriots, and Tank Dell, I don't know when he's going to be available. So perhaps this is a step back year. I think last season, a lot of people expected more from Houston. They did make a couple of moves. They added Hunter, they added Joe Mixon, they added Stephon Diggs, and they were kind of the free agent darlings in some ways, especially from my world in the fantasy football department. But it seems like they could take a step back. Good news for them is their division still stinks.
It's not a great wide receiver draft, but there are wide receivers in this draft, and I would expect them to be in on something like this. Now they've got to rebuild this offensive line because they gave up on 4 out of the 5 players over the last couple of weeks via trades and releases. They slowly started to punch that back a little bit. I think they signed Cam Robinson yesterday, probably the starting left tackle for 2025, but probably a more boring draft than a lot of the Texans fans want, which is a good thing. They're going to formalize that offensive line with some young guns, and maybe they're one of those late trade teams, possibly for a Brandon Ayuk type player to formalize the weapons as they head toward camp.
You're going to bring up Brandon Ayuk until this man gets traded.
They're telling us they want to trade him. They're not even being shy about it anymore, right? I mean, they're just they are all Ricky Pearsall right now.
And Juwan Jennings, he's still on the roster, right? He was great last year. I think that like having someone like that, a veteran presence that was able to really shine without Debo and Brandon Ayuk, probably helps them make some of these decisions. Mm-hmm. The Cincinnati Bengals continued their spending spree, and rumor has it Joe Burrow was putting the pressure on management to get this one done for both players, both Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. I don't know how much pushing he had to do for the Jamar Chase side because he is one of the top 2 wide receivers in the NFL. How much of you believes that he used his leverage, and what kind of leverage would he have other than being their franchise quarterback, because he recently signed a big deal with them?
There's no question that he was vocal about it, and I'm sure he was vocal about his, his desire and maybe his requirement to have these players in fold. That didn't mean that T. Higgins specifically needed a multi-year contract. I mean, they certainly could have put their foot down and kept him on the franchise tag for 2025, and I don't think too many of us would have gawked at it. In fact, just in going back and forth with his agent Tory Dandy a little bit, there was a pretty big sense heading into February that T. Higgins was going to get traded, that the plan in Cincinnati was slap this second tag on him and take offers. And I believe offers were made, maybe not, to the maximum level, but I do think at some point in time that script changed. Now, what was that? Did it have to do with the trade offers lacking a little bit? Did it have to do with Burrow putting pressure on them? Did they start listening to the crazy people like us that are saying, you have no defense, you better have an offense, or rip this whole thing apart? Or did we get to a point where Joe Burrow and his camp said, we're on the clock here. He's already been injury prone. He's got 4 years of guarantees left. It's a rolling option bonus structure that's very easily traded. I'll put that out there. And he could very much have said, if you don't figure this out within the next 12 months, we're going to be talking about different things next March. And certainly they've put their foot down with these 2 players. We'll see what happens with Hendrickson. It seems like that's going in a positive direction as well. So you and I have talked, this was not a bad team last year. They had a terrible start. Burrow continues to be injured in August and September, which sort of derails their whole ramp-up process. And if they can avoid that, this year specifically, they're going to be one of these top 4 AFC teams again. because these two guys, in terms of weapons, are back in the fold. But it's a heck of a lot of money to put down all at one time. I'm avidly against this. I am a stagger, more roster construction process guy, and I think they kind of screwed the pooch on this a little bit.
They just didn't leave themselves a lot of room to help in terms of what this team needs to improve at defensively. But you're right. I think when you frame it like that, it's a little more palatable to think that they just doubled down on offense, because that is something that is working for them. Slow starts, bad kicking. McPherson just fell off a cliff. So they dealt with that last year. And they were one of those teams, like a lot of teams in the NFL, who live on those small margins, and they were losing those small margins. Did they leave themselves any room to patchwork this defense outside of just kind of crossing your fingers, doing what the Seattle Seahawks did a couple of years ago, where you absolutely nail 2 defensive picks in the draft? Do they need that, or can they put this thing together in a different way?
It's pretty obvious that's the route they're going, because it's March 20th and free agency's been done for, 7 days already here, even though we're only literally a week into this league year.
You still get those stragglers, though. I don't know if there's somebody out there you've identified.
Yeah, but I don't think that Cincinnati defense, can be fixed by stragglers at this point in time. I think they need a couple of absolute studs to, maybe in the middle of this thing. And they have made some signings. From a cap perspective, they're going to be fine. I mean, obviously, we don't have the structures yet on this Chase and Higgins contract, so their $20 to $26 million cap hits are going to be reduced greatly. They're going to have plenty of ample space here, but it's pretty clear by the timing of all this that they weren't going to make impact free agent signings on the defensive side of the ball. That just wasn't their plan. So it's all about the draft. To that degree, maybe they're looking to trade Hendrickson for that first round pick still, because that would be the right way to really restart this process from a defensive side of the ball and pick a stud in the middle of that first round and have 2 first round picks. But we'll see where that ends up as well. I want to piggyback a quick situation with this before we get out of here. There's a lot of pushback, and I think Florio's doing a lot of it. And he does this every year, and to some degree, I agree with it. The Derek Stingley Jr. contract that got signed in Houston, which is 3 for $90, high guarantees. In terms of new money, historic in terms of everything across the board. It's a big ass contract, but this is year 4 of his rookie deal. So there were 2 years remaining. There was a year 4 plus the 5th year option, which they're assuming was vested, which comes out to 5 years, $113 million. Okay. And there's this fight going on with these insiders, and I'm quoting that with the insiders that, we shouldn't be reporting it as the new money. We're letting the agents dictate what the numbers are. This is actually a 5-year contract. We're missing the point. Okay. We're missing the point. Stop trying to rank and historic and stop with those and understand that Derek Stingley Jr. signing this contract now is the best move for everybody, including Houston. And the fact that Jamar Chase was not signed after his 3rd year is the real problem. These are the 2 things we should be comparing. Okay. Jamar Chase should be on a 5-year contract right now, not a 4-year contract. He should be on a 5-year contract. T. Higgins is on a 4-year contract because he's extended 4 years out of his second franchise tag. Stingley Jr. is going to have 3 years fully guaranteed, probably a chance to get that 4th year, and he's going to be 28 years old looking for his 3rd contract when cornerbacks are making what? $45 million a year at that point in time. Not to mention, Houston gets 5 years to spread out all of this cap and all these high guarantees and all these numbers that the agent wants you to talk about. We got to stop focusing on what's real and what's not in terms of what the agent's trying to tell us. It's all real. It's just how you're interpreting it. You know what I mean? Are you looking at new money? Are you looking at total value? To me, the only thing that should matter is go to Spot Track and look at the potential outline. Okay. If you want an actual, we built it for that reason. We built it to give you a reality check on it, but all of it's real. What's new, what's old, what's full, what's total, what incentives. It's all part of the process. So I don't want to kill the people that report this stuff too much. I want the idea that Stingley signing now is good and what teams should be doing. And by the way, what the Eagles always do. Okay. They always do this. Devontae Smith was not a highly touted number 2 wide receiver when he signed his contract. They did it anyway. They made him the highest paid number 2 wide receiver in football. Okay. To some degree, Miami has done this and it's backfired a little bit because Tua can't stay healthy. But the signal should be here that Houston's making good strides with this stuff and Cincinnati's still behind the 8 ball. And that's going to bite him at some point in time.
And so you're saying, just to kind of tie a bow on that whole point, that the beauty in this and the win that we should be discussing is that the Texans got ahead of this rather than behind it.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Contract, and it's being misreported as a 3-year extension is not the overall point that should be taken away here. It's that Stingley Jr. was signed as early as humanly possible because he's an all-pro cornerback, and A, he deserves the contract now. B, every month you wait is going to make it more expensive for you, as Cincinnati just found out, because Jamar Chase was probably a $34 million wide receiver this time last year, and now he's $40.25 million. That's just the fact of the NFL. It's an absolute locomotive that you can't stop with this money right now. So good for Houston. Good for them getting a 5-year deal to work with from a salary cap perspective. And good for Derek Stingley Jr. getting in now so he can get out by 28 and sign another historic contract at that point in time. It's just, don't get caught up with the semantics too much. Like let sites like ours tell you what you need to hear. And instead of fighting the reporting, just understand this is a very smart decision by everybody involved. That's it.
It's an important detail, and this is why we run to spottrack.com for all this sort of information. You detailed some of the new information that you got for some big deals signed within the last couple of weeks. Myles Garrett with the Browns, Chris Godwin with the Bucks, Harold Landry now with Mike Vrabel and the New England Patriots, Josh Sweat, one of my favorite, probably my favorite free agent signing with the Arizona Cardinals that I actually think are sneaky dangerous in the NFC West, a division that all of a sudden feels wide open. Is there anything that you learned from the details of these contracts that you want to share with the audience?
For the most part, I'm going to be the biggest hypocrite in the world. For the most part, most of these initial reports are a little high, right?
Oh, come on, Mike. No, not at a time like this.
Because they include all the incentives, because they're giving you the max value, which is perfectly fine. That's never going to change. You know what I mean? Never. They're selling a car here, and sometimes that car is a little used, and they got to make it sound better than it is. So any number you see on SpotTrack in terms of what the contract term is the base value. Okay, it's what they can make without overachieving. But then if you go down to the details, we've got all the incentives broken out and the per game bonuses and everything else that comes with it. So yeah, there's a lot of contracts, big and small, that have been fully detailed on SpotTrack over the past 72 hours. And I'm not finding the time to go and tweet all that information. I'll get there and I'll write some reports up with some of the greatest hits and things like that. But if you are, team oriented, just keep an eye on your team pretty much every 3 to 4 hours, because I'm making small and big updates as soon as this stuff becomes available to us. And by the way, that includes all the nitty pick stuff that, I'm Pro Bowl bonuses and all this stuff that matters at the end of the day. We're getting ahead of it right now so that we can just enjoy ourselves when the season gets here.
All right, we're going to get to our quick hits a little early because I have a few things I want to rattle off with you and some really interesting stuff. The Vikings took themselves out of the Aaron Rodgers business. They have reportedly stopped taking calls on J.J. McCarthy as well, so they're going to move forward with him, as they should. He was a top 10 draft pick last year, and in the very limited, meaningless action that we saw from J.J., he looked pretty good in the preseason. Where does this leave Aaron? Giants, Steelers, retirement? It feels like those are the 3 realistic options at this point.
Maybe. It leaves Aaron, I think, exactly where he wants to be, which is there's not a single team right now, I don't believe, that's going to make him the guy, because the Giants can't. This guy's 41 years old. They know they have to turn the leaf quickly. Pittsburgh's got to turn the leaf quickly. Cleveland's probably going to draft somebody to turn the leaf, but maybe not. So here's my read. I'm going to give you 2 sides of the story quickly. The Minnesota stuff, I'm not sure this is about Aaron Rodgers as much as it's about J.J. McCarthy. You've got to give McCarthy at least the spring and maybe the summer to be the guy. And if you sign Aaron Rodgers today, that goes away 200%. It is now Aaron Rodgers' team. J.J. McCarthy is another afterthought. He is pushed down to the bottom of the roster. Even if he's taking the first reps, nobody's going to care. You know what I mean? Now, it may get to the point where there's a competition and then the media soaks that up, of course. But you can't do that to J.J. McCarthy right now, because you're trying to figure out, if he's your week 1 starter, if he's fully healthy, if he's fully capable, if he has the offense under his belt. You just can't have Aaron Rodgers and the cloud that comes with him on this roster wearing purple at this point in time. And by the way, Rodgers doesn't want to be there anyway. He doesn't want to show up till August 1st. We know how this works. So I do think that Minnesota and Aaron Rodgers can still coexist, but not until August. You know what I mean? So there's probably been some sort of handshake that says, look, if something else comes up, we get it. You got to go do it. But we may need you in August if things don't look 100% for us with JJ as we ramp up towards training camp and towards week 1. So I'm going to leave that there. Here's the thing, right? I don't know that Pittsburgh and the Giants are really strong candidates for Aaron Rodgers. I'm going to leave them at the bottom of this list for a couple of reasons. Arthur Smith and that passing, the run first offense that he wants to run in Pittsburgh, and the Giants just feel like they want something a little bit more mobile in terms of how they want to operate their offense, and that's certainly not Aaron Rodgers. The Browns are fascinating to me, really fascinating, because they have a chance to either completely screw up this draft or be really, really smart with how they handle the next couple of weeks. If they go after these stragglers in free agency, which they've started to do a little bit, especially after they signed Myles Garrett and sort of formalize their foot in the sand moment that they are not giving up on this team just because Deshaun Watson is an albatross. But if their pick at number 2 is Travis Hunter, for instance, and if they add J.K. Dobbins and bring back Nick Chubb and some of these other stragglers that do make a little bit of a sense with a decent offensive line, and they bring in one of these top tier tight ends in the draft to go with Njoku, and things start to look a little bit like, they could sniff a wild card. This is now a really nice drop-in moment in June after the draft for Aaron Rodgers on a 1 or 2 year basis. So there's that I think we could have in our back pocket. But I'd put Cleveland and Minnesota still as dark horse, decent locations for Aaron Rodgers. Here's my question back to you. Do you think retirement is the odds-on favorite right now?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Because I think I would actually put the Steelers as the odds-on favorite, but it would be very close to. It would be Steelers retirement. Because I agree with you. I think the Giants are in a world where they'd like to go a little bit more young at the position and really rip the Band-Aid off rather than try and patch this thing together for the next couple of years. The Browns are interesting. I don't know why I continue to write them off as an option, partially because of their draft stock or their draft status right now sitting at number 2.
Yeah.
I think that they would be most likely to just park there and take a quarterback. But if they do take one of these talented defensive players, then you have to do something because Watson obviously isn't the answer for numerous reasons. Pittsburgh feels like the kind of organization that Rodgers would look at and say, respectable, well-run.
Yeah.
I can listen to Mike Tomlin. And I think Mike Tomlin would be confident enough in his own ability to control the locker room that he wouldn't let the Rodgers thing completely envelop the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I could see that working out. But if they're not interested, I think you're just going to run out of options. And I also wonder how much Aaron Rodgers still wants to be the guy that runs the show, because you're not going to do that in Pittsburgh.
It's wild that Russ and Pittsburgh just haven't figured something out. You know what I mean? There's clearly a disconnect there. But to me, that still does seem like the best marriage, to just run that back for one more year. I don't know why you try to change course knowing that this is all temporary. Everything we're saying here is completely temporary. You know what I mean? Like, there's no long-term answer here. And I don't think Pittsburgh's going to find their long-term answer this May either. But with Cleveland specifically, I just think that there's enough juice there. There's enough false hope, maybe irrational confidence, that just fits the Aaron Rodgers mold so perfectly right now, right? I don't think a lot of us believe he's a winning quarterback anymore, but none of us really believe Cleveland's a winning team either. So that match made in heaven makes a lot of sense. And one thing on the Giants, I don't mean to be pushing them out because they've been clearly talking to all of these people. It just feels like we are 2 weeks away from that Adam Schefter bomb that they have given up the farm to go up to number 1. Doesn't it feel like it's coming? That they're the Cam Ward team, that they are kind of preserving their offseason a little bit here to make sure that they can make that aggressive move and then start to fill in some pieces around it quickly. So I just have them earmarked for that big number one move.
I mean, your division just says so much about the kind of moves that you're going to make.
Yeah.
And Philadelphia is a juggernaut, and the Washington Commanders just did what we're thinking the Giants might do. Hey, let's just go get a quarterback and see if we can fix this thing on the fly.
And just to finish on that, you've got a lame dunk GM and a lame dunk coaching staff in New York. Everybody knows it. They know it. It's not even quiet, right? It's happening out loud. Aaron Rodgers, right? Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston. No,
It's a waste of a year.
If you convince your ownership that giving up the farm to go to number one to get Cam Ward is a susceptible move, is a good move, I should say, you've now bought yourself, I think, 3 years as a front office and maybe as a coaching staff, right? Because now you can hang your head on this kid who needs to develop a little bit, right? You've probably taken yourself off the hot seat by making this crazy aggressive move. And if that doesn't work, of course, you're done because you've already gone through this with Daniel Jones. But if that doesn't work, you're completely done. And it's certainly back to square one for the Giants organization as a whole. So I'm hanging my hat on that for a lot of reasons, but that to me makes the most sense.
Yeah. And they already have a legit number one receiver in Malik Neighbors. Loved what he was able to put together last year. So the Celtics have been sold for a valuation. They've been excuse me. The report is from Shams. Bill Chisholm, managing partner of Symphony Technology Group, has agreed to purchase the Boston Celtics from the Grusbeck family for a valuation of, you're going to want to sit down for this, $6.1 billion. This is the largest sale for a sports franchise in North America. That is astounding, Mike. That sets a whole new bar for sports ownership.
There's no question. We kind of knew this was headed this direction. You know, the recent Sportico valuations for NBA teams, I believe, had Golden State over $9 billion. So we kind of knew this was coming. The Phoenix Suns were the last majority sale here. And I believe that was a $4 billion transaction for Matt Ishbia out there. And that's Phoenix, not a small market, not a huge market, but Boston's one of the top 3 most expensive cities in the country right now, right? This is a big fish. It's a local guy. It's a Celtics guy. You know what I mean? That's a big deal, I know, to that organization as a whole and to the league. You want to make sure that you're not bringing in, too much of an outside influence here. And they're breaking records all over the place. I think the quick comparison I saw was the Commanders just sold for $6.05 billion. And I wouldn't be shocked if that was part of this driving conversation, is that the NFL is what everybody is trying to keep up with here. And this is the Celtics. This is the world champs. This is a huge market, a huge city. And it's going to take a little bit more than the last NFL sale to get us done. And that's what we have here. So it's a big win for the league, with ratings being in such a conversation and the season being too long and the injury stuff and, where we're headed. This is a big win, financially speaking, for the NBA.
Your best guess as to what the Lakers or Cowboys would sell for right now? Those would be the two.
Yeah.
Well, the Yankees would be up there as well.
Yeah, the Lakers, man. The Cowboys are certainly in this conversation because it's NFL. And
I think the Cowboys would go for the most because it's the NFL and they're the biggest brand. The Yankees would probably be the second biggest buy.
So the sale price always comes in a little bit lower than the valuation. I believe the Dallas Cowboys are at 10, right? They're at that 10 billion valuation.
That would have been my guess. I think the Cowboys could be sold for 10 billion.
Yeah, maybe the actual price comes in a little bit under that, but that's probably the pie in the sky barometer. So the Lakers are what, 7.5 right now, right? About 7.5 billion. They've got to be markedly more than Boston because of everything that comes with it. And the fact that Luka Doncic is now here for another 10 years, that helps. That certainly helps. But there's a lot to go into this, and this is not a number I thought we were going to get. I'll put it this way. When Phoenix went for 4, I thought for sure it was just logically that Boston was in the 5s. So to go over 6, not just approach 6, but be over 6 is a huge step forward for this league as a whole.
Wow. I just looked back at what Jerry Buss bought the Lakers for. Yeah. $67 million.
Yeah. They're doing all right. Yeah. Jeannie's doing okay. She's hanging in.
That way, whenever you're ready to cash in, you got a big paycheck coming your way. I don't know how you and I haven't talked about this yet. You were on my show earlier this week. We've had 30 plus minutes here. Major League Baseball was on at 6 a.m. the last couple of days.
You love it, right?
Oh my God. I cannot believe, Mike, I used to complain about this, and I really have judged myself for the last couple of days. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm getting older. I don't know, but I have loved sitting there with my morning cup of coffee, watching Major League Baseball games that matter. It's awesome for Tokyo. It's awesome for fans here, for us on the East Coast. They get to sit and watch that as soon as we wake up. It's been incredible. And I'm honestly, I miss it already.
Okay. So obviously I'm with you because big baseball guy, but two points to make here. Number one, it helps that the stadium's packed. Okay. That would not be the case if we were waking up at 7 a.m. for the Sacramento Athletics versus the, Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. So you wouldn't have that same quite experience. However, I believe fully this is why English Premier Soccer in America is so popular. It's the timing of it. It's the scheduling, being able to wake up with a cup of coffee or on the West Coast, with some lunch at times. And being able to enjoy soccer. I don't even think people care about soccer. They want something live that has a packed stadium, that is raucous, that is at times violent to be on in their lives in the background, while they're waking up and their kids are running around the house. It's just a vibe. You know what I mean? It is just a vibe. Completely. And I think people that don't give a rat's behind about baseball just wanted to have something on that wasn't, local news or national news or something else that they're competing with. So it really is something. They could do this on Sundays. They've done 11 o'clock games on Sundays. They could go earlier on Sundays if they wanted to do this with more international series, and it would be successful. And by the way, the NFL's doing this, right? They're throwing 9 a.m. games at us, and we're certainly getting up for those.
Well, I mean, and think about the magic of the teams that were involved, the Dodgers and the Cubs, massive brands. Then you start to look at the individuals, Japanese players all over the place, and Shohei Ohtani, who is basically a god over there. So Imanaga and Roki Sasaki.
Yamamoto, yep.
I mean, come on. It was,
by the way,
how do you think the merch stand did over there in Tokyo?
My God, the Sasaki jerseys alone had to be flying, absolutely flying when he went 100 to start that outing.
Oh, my God.
By the way, Ohtani, not a home run. I don't know what we're doing here. Okay. We all have high definition and replay, and we're all gambling here. That was not a home run. I don't know what we're doing. Game one, you screw this up. What's going on?
Give me some replay review. Where you at? This episode has been presented by Bettor Edge. Sign up, try it out, bet with your friends, bet with us, and we got a bracket challenge going on right now. Use the promo code SPOTTRACK at sign up at bettoredge.com or on the app. $20 at sign up, and do us a favor, subscribe and rate the pod that you're enjoying right now. Make sure you go visit spottrack.com for all the latest in the sports contractual world. Best of luck to your bracket. May it stay intact for at least a couple of days. See you, Mike.